But okay, because we're kind of like halfway through, I really want to make sure we have enough time to get to this rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously top players in the league playing on different teams, and both of them getting a lot of media attention before they were in the WNBA, and played each other a couple times. Most recently, as we said, Chicago Sky beating the Fever by 1 point. And in the post-game press conferences and scrums and so on and so forth, both players were asked about the rivalry between these two women. And rivalry, of course, you want rivalries in sports. You want that edge. You want that competition. You want that motivation. But I think the way the media has been spinning this rivalry, that they're making it seem like it's almost personal, like these two girls don't like each other, and their reaction to both of their reactions, to those statements. Angel Reese is like, look, it's just competition. And if it's good for the game, I'm all for it. But she made it seem like, yeah, there's nothing personal. We respect each other. And Caitlin Clark said the same thing, addressing the media and saying, I think the people that are making this a bigger rivalry than it is just you guys. Like, you guys are looking for storylines. You guys are creating this. It's competition. We respect each other, and it's good, et cetera, et cetera. So love those answers. And if that's the truth, then that's what needs to be portrayed. But as we talked about ticket sales against these two teams playing each other, just exposure, highlights, all these things. If there is this underlying storyline of a bit of a rivalry between these two players, as long as it's not getting personal and ugly, I think it's great for the game. We see it all the time in men's sports and all across different leagues, like, Cristiano Ronaldo versus Messi, if they ever have a chance to play each other, the rivalry, or who's going to be better, who's going to come out on top. Like, that is what you want. So I'm very for this storyline, as long as it's not getting making up personal attacks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, there are definitely some tough things that have happened between the two, and morally, you're kind of like, oh boy, I hope it isn't personal. I hope it doesn't cross the line of bullying at some point. But I think you are right. I did hear that as well. Like, the Caitlin Clark was kind of just like, I feel like you guys are kind of looking for storylines. And I did hear that analysis. It's like, what is a rivalry? A rivalry is when two parties are involved. And it kind of seemed like at first, initially, surface level, it looked like Caitlin Clark wasn't really engaging in this so-called rivalry. So it's almost like, can you even call it a rivalry at that point? But then when you talk to each player individually, and even hearing interviews from their college days, they have a ton of respect for each other and a ton of respect for each other's game. And it is kind of cool, because Angel Reese, she mentioned something at one point, and she's like, I think I'm a pretty good player, but if you look at some of the best players in the I think this was in college, in the league at the time, she mentioned Caitlin Clark being one of the best. And that just kind of shows the respect for one another. So whatever happens on the court, it's kind of like, it's part of the game. It's almost like the publicity and whatever happens off the court, it's like, is that all just kind of manufactured? Is it fan fueled? Are we to blame, not as the media, but are we to blame as fans for picking sides? Are we fueling this so-called rivalry? And I heard another statement from Caitlin Clark just saying, it's a shame we can't talk about what's happening on the floor, because it's a really good game if you stop and watch. It's a shame that we have to talk about this all the time. I'm just here to play basketball. And Angel Reese is quite the competitor too. I mean, she's gritty, she's tough. I like the way she plays the game. And it's interesting, because they do speak highly of one another. And I think that's an angle of the story that the media should kind of focus on a little more moving forward. And then you're also dealing with two different types of personalities. It seems like Angel Reese is kind of an outspoken person. What you see is what you get. You probably don't have to often wonder what's on her mind. As for Caitlin Clark, she seems a little more reserved. She seems less likely to speak up and just kind of say anything outside of the business mold. So another thing a question that I thought about was, a lot of these minor league baseball teams I work with, a lot of the college hockey teams I work with, they do go through media training. They do talk with their coaches and team publicists, if that's part of it, how to handle interviews, how to handle, things that come up in the media. And does the WNBA have, I don't know, but do they have these resources? And should, publicists, team publicists be working with rookies more moving forward on like how to handle these situations? I don't know. And do you think there would be a need for that given just this situation?
I feel like every professional sports team, obviously you have your PR so that you can promote the game, the league, and have access to the players. And I definitely think, if you're talking, because I cover the NHL, I always like use them as an example. But if you're talking about like a 19, 18-year-old, 20-year-old Connor Bedard, a young kid, there's like social media everywhere. There are no longer 6 reporters in a room. There's like 35. There are like more reporters than there are players on the roster sometimes. It's crazy. And you want to help a child, because that is what they are, a kid. You want to help a kid navigate that and make sure that they don't say the wrong thing, not because it's the wrong thing to say, but because saying the wrong thing, and depending on what market you're in, could kill you, could literally just ruin your life for a long time. And I've seen that working in the Toronto market. And then the fallout from depression and feeling like like the spotlight's on you. All of those reasons, I think every single team should have media training, because and resources to help kids and people manage their emotions, and the harsh reality of like, you might say a whole sentence and they'll take 3 words and that's going to be the headline. Now, I don't want to overprotect that, because I love the rawness that we get from players, and I love that. But if it's someone like Angel Reese or Caitlin Clark or LeBron James, or like I mentioned, Connor Bedard or Patrice Bergeron, who's now retired, but they're stars of the game. So, or Hillary Knight. So they're going to get, constant attention. They're going to have chances to not redo it. That's the wrong way. That's not the word I'm looking for, but they're going to be spoken to throughout the entire season and the year. So it won't be taken out of context like one time. Whereas if you're a, 4th line player, if you're a bench player and you have a good game, and then you don't really have a lot of exposure, and you get exposure one time and you're put on the spotlight, you don't know how to handle it. That can bite you in the ass, because you might not, get as many minutes, or you may not play again. And then that's kind of what sticks with you. So every single team should have this, with the way the media is going and the attention is going, to protect the player and to help them understand and how to handle what they're getting into, because it is a cruel world out there for sure. So I don't think because of this rivalry, this should be, or, these storylines, I think it should be that way for sure. And I don't know about the resources they have for that. I know in the NHL for sure, they talk to guys and they don't like train them and say, you can't say this and you can't say that and answer a question this way. It's not rules. It's more like, hey, this is the landscape. We're a big market. We're a small market. We have this many reporters. This is what it's like. And I think every player deserves that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I like that perspective. Obviously, I'm not in an NHL locker room like you are. So it's crazy to hear 30 reporters, sometimes, more than who's on the roster. It's like, how intimidating is that for a kid? Like, can you imagine being 18 years old and having all those people around you asking you questions, and you can barely think because you're probably so nervous? And it's like, situations like that, no one can really prepare you for the moment and the emotions that you feel. Like, I don't know. I would probably say something that I didn't mean or didn't want to, simply from nerves in the moment. So it's like, the media training can not only teach you how to handle those high capacity moments, but also how to speak eloquently and say the things that are going to help you rather than hurt you. And I don't know. So if anybody watching has any insight as to what resources are in the WNBA and whatnot, that way I can speak to it a little more, accurately. It's like, I'd love to hear it, just because, since there is such a new light being shed on women's sports, it's like, I'd love to explore that avenue of it and continue to give them the press they deserve, but also respect it and understand, why things are being said the way they are and whatnot like that. But I think it's been